I haven't done an IEM review in a while, but today I'm looking at the KBEAR KS2. KBEAR are perhaps well known for their Diamond IEM, but the KS2 is one of their newer and more wallet-friendly options. I've had the KS2 here for quite some time now, but I'm only just getting around to reviewing it. Is it any good? Well, let's get into it. Hey guys, this is Noel and this is Wheezy Tech, and each week I take a look at a thing and let you know what I think, so if you're into that kind of stuff then make sure you subscribe. Hitting that notification bell also helps too. In the interest of full disclosure, the KS2 was sent to me by Keep Hifi at a heavy discount, and when I say heavy discount we're talking pennies, and it was basically free. Regardless, as always, whether I pay for something myself or I get sent a review sample, I'm always going to give you my honest take on them, and also, as usual, there are timestamps in the description if you want to skip to any specific section. And before we get started, the name, KBEAR. I usually see this name listed as KBEAR with no space, and I was kind of disappointed when I realized they were not called KBEAR. KBEAR, that sounds kind of cool. Well, let's just get on with the review. So the KBEAR KS2 has the familiar chifi or KZ style 3-piece body with a resin body shell and faceplate, and a metal nozzle which I think looks like brass. The KS2 uses a hybrid driver design featuring a 10mm dynamic driver and a single balanced armature. Impedance is listed at 16 ohms with a sensitivity of 160 dB. There are 4 pairs of tips included in the usual small, medium and large sizes, and you get an extra pair of mediums. The cable connection method is a 0.78mm 2-pin, and the supplied cable is the usual 4-core chifi affair of the sort that's gonna make me complain of its stiffness and overall quality, but this is what you always get at this price point, so there's no point moaning, I suppose. If you do want a decent upgrade recommendation, my go-to is the TRN T2 16-core cable. Now, whether it's worth upgrading the cable on such a cheap IEM, that's up to you, but I'll leave a link in the description anyway. Speaking of the price, the KS2 is quite reasonable at $20 to $25. That is a little bit cheaper than the Blon BL-03 and actually quite reasonable too, considering the performance. Comfort is always subjective, but I found no issues with the fit and comfort, and this is the usual chifi body shape with a lightweight design which should fit most people. I normally mention the weight at this point, but my kitchen scales are packed up, so I can't. I'm sorry. The KBEAR KS2 have, as Critical would say, the usual generic chifi V-shaped sound signature, and they actually remind me more of the Blon BL-03 than any other IEM I've tried so far. Now, I'll unpack that a little bit more as we go on. Actually, I think overall the IEM they remind me of the most is the QKZ VK4. But whilst the VK4 has a cheaper build and a more Harman-leaning signature, that is to say that the VK4 has that Harman bass shelf that I quite enjoy. The KS2 goes that little bit further in the bass, much more like the Blon BL-03. This is a rather V-shaped sound signature that lends itself well to modern genres like rock, chart pop, EDM and hip-hop and so on. So I'm not even going to bother doing a critique on them for the more traditional genres like jazz and classical, because if that's the sort of thing that you're into, these IEMs are really not for you. Now, whilst the bass is quite present, I find it doesn't have the same sense of bloating that I got with the Blon BL-03, and I know that a lot of people disagree with my take on the BL-03. But you'll need to factor in the huge unit variances seen with the Blons, and on my sample the BL-03's bass was bordering on muddy, but with the KS2 I find it is much cleaner. I also find that the KS2 is quicker and a little bit more articulate than the BL-03, detail being the real weak point of the BL-03, but it seems like the KS2 kind of corrects on this. In terms of mid-range, low mids are perhaps a little bit coloured around the low end, again, not to the same extent as the Blon BL-03, but this is a V-shaped sound sig, so that does mean that the mids will sound a little bit recessed. But what I find the most surprising and most welcome is the lack of any harsh shout in the upper mids, as is often heard on many chifi, especially KZ earphones. So whilst this might be a generic V-shaped sound, it's not the usual shouty affair seen with so many other budget-fi earphones. Again, this is also reminiscent of the Blon BL-03 having that more restrained upper mid-range. Shouty upper mids are a one-way ticket to listening fatigue, and there's none of that here. Treble is decently extended and there's a decent amount of detail, again without being too harsh or shouty, and without being quite as dark as the Blon BL-03. Again, some people think that the Blon BL-03 is not dark, but again, unit variants, certainly the unit I had, did have a dark tilt to it. Overall, there's a decent amount of detail for a budget-fi casual earphone, more so than on the Blon BL-03, and soundstage is also really rather good, and this is another way they remind me of the QKZ-VK4. All in, I think that the KBEAR KS2 feel like a V-shaped version of the QKZ-VK4, or a more refined Blon BL-03, at least in terms of sound. Although the metal construction of the Blons does feel much more premium, fit issues notwithstanding. All in terms of sound, they actually really do impress for the price, and I do tend to prefer a more casual or V-shaped sound for my walking around music. I'll usually be listening to some lo-fi beats or something like this, and this sound signature is my preferred casual sound sig. And for that, I couldn't really ask for much more at sub $25. But I am still relatively new to the world of IEMs, and as much as I have criticised the Blon BL-03 for being so overhyped as a fairly cheap, poorly fitting and not especially detailed earphone, it has, until now, remained my recommendation for a sub $30 IEM with a casual sound signature. So do I recommend the KBEAR KS2? Yes, I think they make a fine entry-level earphone. Those looking for a less V-shaped sound should probably look to the QKZ-VK4 if you want a really cheap option, but I'm pretty confident in saying that the KBEAR KS2 is my new recommendation for a V-shaped casual earphone at this price point. Okay, so that's it for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and all of that business. Check the cards for other relevant content, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.